Hi,
This
Tony.
is like being down the pub.
Yeah, that's good, yeah. How are you doing, Tony? All right?
Yeah, doing good.
Yeah,
Nice
so-
to see you again.
yeah,
we
likewise.
chat off camera and get on, and it's nice.
Yes, it's always nice to exchange information.
Yeah.
And so I think earlier we were talking about the original sin and how you, as a spiritual atheist, if I got that
Thank
label
you.
right,
I like that.
if I like that, I hope that label is not misrepresenting you. And I would like to know, because I'm assuming you come from a Christian background as well.
Came from a Christian background, and I always had a rather groovy view of Christianity. It seemed to be a very benign and positive religion.
Right.
Then I got concerned that it also seemed to be saying that people who were of other religions were going to go to hell, which didn't seem fair if they were behaving well. And it seemed to me there were a lot of good people who were Muslims, atheists, Buddhists, and I didn't really believe in a loving, merciful God who would consign people to hell, which is a topic I've discussed with other people, haven't discussed with you. So that made me hope that maybe all the world's religions were saying profound things and just getting some of the small print wrong, but the common denominators were far more important than the differences, yeah?
That's interesting. So what other religions have you looked into other than Christianity?
Kabbalism.
What's that?
It's the Judaic mystical tradition which
I see.
underpins that. And I think Kabbalism has got a lot going for it. But
So it's Kabbalah.
yeah, Kabbalah.
Okay.
And then just generally I've read some bits on Buddhism, I'm trying to learn more about Islam, and I'm always looking for what are the common denominators, and then what are the key points of difference, and how much are those key points of difference more important than the key common denominators. And what I find is it would be nice if around here there was a lot of more conversations between Muslims, atheists and Christians looking at the common denominators in their thinking to counterbalance the inevitable conversations about the differences, yeah? I think you get the healthiest dialogue if you look at both angles.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, that's quite an important point, because even the Quran mentions, like, let us come to a common term.
Yeah.
And then because it's quite easy to build up on common terms.
Yeah.
So you discuss what is common, and then you build up on that.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree.
So you mentioned Buddhism. So I'm assuming you looked into reincarnation.
A bit. I'm not. My focus isn't really on the supernatural stuff.
Right.
I used to believe in the supernatural stuff, and now I've pretty much let that go. I'm not saying it's not the case.
So when you say supernatural, what comes to mind?
I think anything that you might consider to be a miracle. So the kind of thing that you might promote as being a miracle and therefore noteworthy.
Right.
Like walking on water.
I think soul is miracle. Do you believe in souls?
Yeah. Now we're on the one. Thank you for calling me a spiritual atheist.
Exactly. That's the
Right.
reason I call it spiritual.
Thank
Because you know, to anyone who looks into science and so on,
Yeah.
they normally pretty much discard the soul.
Right.
Except for unless they themselves
Yeah.
believe in spirituality and so on.
Which is
because to me,
hopelessly
soul without a soul, it's like the software for your body, which is the hardware.
Yeah.
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 And without the software, a computer is useless.
It's a very good thesis. It may or may not be true, but I mean, it's a very credible thesis.
Obviously, I'm not telling you to look at it in such a way, because even if you look at the ROM that is set up in the hardware,
Yeah.
yes, even that is a software as well,
Yeah.
isn't it?
Yeah.
So this is something that it's just an analogy, isn't it?
No, it's a very good analogy.
Yeah.
If you're thinking of consciousness as
So do
being
you
the
still believe
software,
in a soul?
I'm happy to take the soul as being a metaphor for consciousness, and I'm happy to go that you and I would definitely agree on the hard problem, yeah?
Yes.
Of consciousness.
Yes.
And atheists agree on the hard problem of consciousness. So I think we can put that profound mystery at the center of our thinking. And there we're on common ground, and then moving out from there, we can see where we diversify.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So you did mention consciousness, and I have no issues. I mean, if you use the term consciousness instead of soul, I mean interchangeably.
Actually, do you mind if I use the term qualia?
Qualia, yeah, you can use
Because
that as well. But it's just for our audience. We don't want to get too technical.
I know. Well, if you don't mind, if we use the term qualia to cover all of those things, because different people mean different things by consciousness, awareness, sentience.
And that's why I was going to ask you how you define it. I always do, because there are terms that we might be using, but then they mean completely different. For example, when I discuss with Christians, the term angels for them is different to the terms that angels that the Muslims use.
Right.
I don't know if you were aware of the difference.
How is it different?
So, in Islam, we believe that the angels, they do not have the kind of free will that we have. So, if for example, if God gives them an order, they have no choice but to obey.
Okay.
Yes? Whereas for us, human beings, we have free will. So we have the freedom to either obey God or disobey God. And this is where the angels and the humans differ.
So you think in the Christian tradition the angels have free will because of Satan rebelling
Exactly,
and all that?
yeah.
Okay.
So in Islam, Satan is not an angel, or not even a fallen angel. Satan is a different kind who also have a free will, and that is a kind called jinn. So humans and jinn both have free will.
So jinn are separate from angels? Jinn
Yes,
are
so we have three
supernatural
different
beings with
so
free will.
three different beings: jinn, angels, and humans.
Jinn
Jinn
taken
and-
to be negative or not?
No, jinn also, just like the humans, they can either obey or disobey God. So there are good jinns and bad jinns.
What's the consequence for a jinn if he doesn't obey?
Same as humans.
Go to hell?
Yes, same as humans.
So he's existing in, sorry, we've moved off topic, but I'm interested.
Yeah.
So what, a jinn is existing in sort of a twilight condition like a human being between heaven and hell?
No, jinns are, so they might be on earth, but they can't impact us. Like unless, I don't know, there's different theories, unless they are summoned or something like that. But like that's completely not something, not a topic I'm specialized in or even aware much, but I know superficially about this. But they are in this world, and just like us, they obey and disobey God. And there's also a surah, there's an entire chapter in the Quran called Surah Al-Jinn.
Okay.
And so yes, like I said, the difference between the angels and the jinn and the insan, the human beings, is mainly the free will.
Okay.
And also in the way they are, their essence as well. So we are created, human beings are created from dust, the jinn are created from fire, and the angels from light. So this is another difference in their essence, how they differ.
Okay.
Well, we're going off topic. Let's go back to...
Just to clarify what you just said, I don't want to misrepresent.
Yeah, because
I'm happy to what you just said, with respect.
Yeah.
To me, I'm happy to buy on a metaphorical level. And you might be right, but my best guess is that I don't believe in that literal level of the supernatural.
Yeah.
Okay, but where we do concur is on qualia and consciousness, which is irrefutably real.
Yes, of course.
And
We can't deny it.
Yeah, and it's a total, it's a total slap in the face to materialism. Yeah.
But I think there are certain religions, I believe, like Hinduism and Buddhism, who believe that there's something called universal consciousness, or universal qualia, maybe. What do you think of that? Have you looked into it?
Well, I think that would be a good metaphor for God. God would seem to be sort of the universal qualia. Thomas Nagel, I think, wrote a book called The View from Nowhere.
From Noah.
From Nowhere.
From Nowhere, okay.
Which I think is a fascinating title. And I think he's describing the material universe before life appeared in it.
Right.
And I think maybe you can see God as being the view from everywhere. Yeah? The conscious view from everywhere. That would be the God's eye perspective. Would be if you could be inside each human heart, each human mind, experience everything
But
that's
then,
happening.
but then how would you square up the question of identity? For example, if there is such a thing as God, who is, let's say, universal, yes, and he connects with you somehow.
Yeah.
And I believe the Hindus have such a belief where they call it Brahman, who is this universal soul, yes, and everything is inside him. So it's kind of panentheism, not pantheism.
Yeah.
See what I mean? So they have this concept.
Run that by me again. What's the difference between pantheism and...
So pantheism is like everything is God.
Right.
Panentheism is everything is in God. So if you look at...
I've never heard that before, thank you.
If you use
panentheism is everything is in God, and what's the difference?
So if you use a Venn diagram, so let's say you have two circles, one inside the other. Now, that is panentheism. So that small circle within the big circle, like the big circle is God, and the small circle is the universe, so everything else.
Okay.
So everything is inside God, whereas pantheism is just one circle.
Got it.
Everything is God.
Okay, so it's more like Spinoza.
Yeah.
Spinoza would be more pantheistic.
Yes.
Okay, because here's where I think terms may get used, create unnecessary conflict, because I think an implication of pantheism is that you believe in multiple deities. That seems to carry into the idea, yeah?
Yeah.
But that's not inherent in kind of Spinoza view would just be that God is inherently everywhere. Yeah?
Yes.
God, whereas from a Muslim position...
That's again different. When you say God is everywhere and everything is God, and everything is in God, so that now you're talking about three different things.
So basically they reject the soil and they said the soil is the God. everybody has his own soul, right?
We're agreeing that consciousness seems to be transcendent and divine, yes? We're happy that on that so
No,
far.
not for Muslims. Everything is created except God. Okay, so the consciousness itself, your soul itself, is also a creation of God. So we don't think it transcends in a way like it's like if God wanted, he could have let's say that soul can cease to exist if God wanted it to.
Okay.
Yes, and I believe the Christians also believe the same thing.
Yeah, I'm not buying that, I may be wrong, but
Yeah.
what I'm trying to keep is the common ground of going, we agree qualia exists.
Yes.
We agree it can't be defined, it's a hard problem. Yeah, it seems to have no matter and no energy.
No, I wouldn't say it can't be defined. It can be defined. It cannot be.
Pinned
You
down.
cannot have empirical evidence for it.
That's what I mean.
Yeah. So you need definition to identify something.
sure.
Yes. So you cannot talk about something unless you're able to
Sure.
define it.
But the reason it's a hard problem is they
Yeah,
can't
you
pin
can't.
it down cognitively.
Exactly. So you can't go to a lab and look at your
Yeah,
consciousness.
so we agree we've got a profound mystery here,
Yes.
which you embody, I embody, everybody else embodies, and that it doesn't seem to be a coincidence that the world's religions, including Islam, seem to be giving prescriptive advice as to how to handle the problem of being an entity with qualia. And qualia is irresistible to materialism and atheism. There's no way you can deny it because you know it more certainly than anything else.
Absolutely. I mean, every faculty that you use for your reasoning, for rationality and stuff like that, even your emotions, it rests on your consciousness.
Right.
Because if you're not aware and you're not control of it, then how would you even reason? How would you even question?
Yeah.
The questioning that the atheists ask, it has to be based on your consciousness.
Yeah.
Because a rock wouldn't question things.
Sure.
Yes, or anything which is not sentient wouldn't be able to question.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can't think. It can't think for itself. It's not aware of its environment, whereas the conscious beings are.
Yeah.
But for people who talk about this universal consciousness, that is where I have a slight objection with regards to identity. Because if you're talking about one consciousness, then who is responsible when somebody commits a crime? Is it that one consciousness, or is every individual having their own individual consciousness? Do you understand?
Again, with respect, that's a hell of a jump. You know what I mean? You've jumped ahead numerous levels from a point of agreement. The fact you phrased the question as who, did you say who created it? Or did you say who's
No,
responsible?
I said in Islam we believe everything is a creation other than Allah, other than God Almighty.
Sure.
Okay, so yes, consciousness, soul, these are creations of God.
Okay.
Okay, in fact, we believe that even time is a creation of God.
Okay. Now I'm open to the idea that qualia may be created by a supernatural entity.
Yeah.
It may have arisen upward from material level upwards as an emergent property, which is somehow transcendent, but it is unavoidably the most intrinsically inescapable reality there is.
Oh
And
yeah,
there's
definitely.
no point in denying
Definitely.
it.
So we
you-
already agreed.
We
about
agree on
that.
the intrinsic.
Yeah. That's why I moved on to the identity
I'm
part.
not agreeing necessarily. I think it unlikely there's a supernatural God,
Yeah.
but I'm more than happy to buy the idea that the supernatural God is a metaphor for a process which will explain what's going on within a moral and meaningful framework and do a good job of it.
Okay, so if you deny supernatural God or supernatural being,
Yeah.
then I have to bring this in because to me everything is creation. So I'm thinking from Islamic perspective.
Yeah, I get
For us, everything is creation. So when you talk about the universe, it includes everything.
Yeah.
It includes qualia, it includes the material, it includes the energies, everything that you can imagine.
Yeah.
It includes that. What it doesn't include is God Almighty because before the universe existed, God existed, which the supernatural being. So the question naturally comes to mind for a Muslim would be, where do you think the universe came from?
It's a question to come to everybody. How did we get here? Who are we? And
Yeah.
I think crucially, how should we live? Is actually the most important question religious ask, even more than the scientific question about how this happened. Can we just backtrack and clarify quickly? Because you've mentioned pantheism, which is the idea that God is intrinsically all of this, which
Yeah.
I think is Spinoza and a kind of, it's a more of a Platonic idea, yeah? Then you've mentioned
Panentheism.
Panentheism, which would be the idea that creation is within the wider God. And then maybe I've misunderstood, but I thought in your tradition you see God as being specifically outside. So two different Venn diagrams.
Yes, so
Which
we
is the
are
third thing.
so we are dualist in the sense that God and creation.
Are totally separate.
Yes, totally. Because before creation, God always existed.
Yeah.
So he doesn't need to be inside creation in that sense. He always existed, whether the creation exists or not, he's not dependent on it. So God is independent of everything, whereas creation is always dependent. Creation is going to be contingent all the time.
Right.
Yes?
Yeah.
And that includes the consciousness as well.
Yeah, so God is sort of sustaining reality from the outside,
Yes.
moment by moment, in a kind of Bishop Berkeley kind of fashion.
Sustaining, yes, he's always sustaining everything and
To be is
everyone.
to be perceived, I think he says something like that. So God is sort of the light that's keeping the whole thing happening.
Yeah,
from
so
the
without
outside.
God, just like without our soul, we wouldn't function.
Yeah,
Yes? Similarly, without God, the creation wouldn't even exist, let alone function.
yeah. Again, I'm not taking that literally, but I think what you've just said is a great metaphor for what qualia brings to the picture.
Well-
Without qualia switching on the light, there
But even
really is
like
nothing. There's nothing happening.
Like I said, qualia comes afterwards. Before, if you don't have the universe, then you don't have qualia. Simple as that. Because, like I said, from a Muslim perspective, everything is a creation, including qualia.
I get it. And from unfortunately my perspective, which is where we're
Where
going
do
to
you
differ,
where do you think qualia originated from?
I'm keeping it an open thing. It may have come from the kind of God you describe.
Okay.
It's possible. But I'm creating a hierarchy of probability. I'm trying to be honest with
So
myself.
what's the other alternative?
The other alternative is that it's either it's okay. The options seem to be, and I think I'm quoting whoever it is, Karl Popper. I think the options seem to be either qualia, which we can take to be a metaphor for the soul for a minute, roughly.
Yeah,
Is
that's
that
fine
okay?
with me, yeah.
Okay, either it's kind of descended into the material body and it's
where?
kind of riding it around. Good question, we'll get there. But if we just break down the categories, yeah?
Because I'm talking about the origin. I like this question of origin
Me
because
too.
this is one thing the science always leaves out because science doesn't specialize in origin. It tells you how things work. So when you ask a scientist where did the universe come from, they will most likely speculate, but they'll say at the end we don't know. But they'll explain to you intrinsically how things work
Yeah.
in the universe. Where did it originate from? Same thing with regards to the first cell.
Yeah.
How did it originate? Where did it originate from? Again, they're not really bothered about this, to be honest. Because science is about explaining the physical world, how things function.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
I think science. Are you familiar with the fact-value axis at all?
Elaborate, please.
Who promotes it? What's his name? I've forgotten his name now. Putnam. Hilary
Okay.
Putnam. I think he's at Harvard. But it's a common. It fits in with Kant's idea that the mind is an x-y axis between space-time on the y-axis and categories of mind on the x-axis. Actually, forget it. We'll come back to it.
No, that's fine because the space-time continuum again is quite important. Without that, science cannot function.
Okay.
They cannot write an equation, they cannot theorize, they cannot experiment,
Yeah.
they cannot even talk about it unless they believed in fairy tales and talk about speculation, and this science is not. Science is always hard facts, empirical evidence.
Exactly. This is the problem with scientific methodology. I think is aspiring to explain facts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas I think spirituality is trying to explain truth, and truth and facts are not the same thing. So
No, but when you say facts, I mean, look, science does deal with theory, and theory is an opinion, not a fact.
of course.
So it does deal with opinions, not facts all the time. It theorizes, so it can, for example, it can predict things based on their inferences or whatever methods they use, and there's nothing wrong in that. What science is not is that it will not deal with metaphysical things like consciousness, qualia, and so on.
I think we're actually agreeing, but I
Yeah.
think I saw where it seemed like we disagreed. When I say science deals with facts, I don't mean that science is putting forward facts. I mean its focus is to try and find facts. And to find facts, like the fact of gravity,
Yeah.
I would say gravity is a fact. It's independent of it's consistent from all frames of reference, and its inevitability. You guys draw the distinction between contingency and necessary, yeah?
Yeah.
I prefer the word inevitable rather than necessary, but however we come at it.
Semantics.
Necessary's got a kind of a teleological overtone, which implies meaning.
As long as you and I understand
yeah,
they mean
if you
similar
don't mind me
things.
using the word inevitable. So
Yeah,
gravity,
that's
I
fine.
would say, is an inevitable fact.
Yeah.
And for science to study it, it needs to strip away all of the value distortions that might blur it from being able, the cognitive biases that will obscure it getting to the core fact. But these facts have no moral value, they have no meaning, they have no teleology. Qualia brings all of those things to the table, which guess what is what God and religion do.
I agree, and to me, qualia is something also of the metaphysical world. So
Yeah.
I don't think science will deal with it in the way it does with everything else from the physical world. Because look, this is where I think is a handicap for science. And I don't think, well, it's not really a handicap even because science never defined itself as looking for something other than
Exactly.
what's in the physical
Exactly.
world.
Science
So,
is getting criticised
yeah.
for doing something it was never.
I totally agree, yeah.
Science was never going to say, we're going to tell you how to live. That's not its job. Its job was just to tell you, we're going to tell you how the facts of your environment operate.
How things function in the natural world.
And you're going to have to go somewhere else to find out how to live.
It's only certain atheists who come say, okay, what is the evidence for God? You're using the wrong tool, mate. It's like me asking them. It's like me asking them, okay, here's a metal detector, go and find plastic now.
We agree.
You know, wrong tool for the wrong purpose.
However, I've got an inconvenient caveat on that, and I do agree with you.
Yeah.
However, I think that truth and value and all the important stuff exists way above facts.
I agree.
But I don't think it can exist in contradiction to facts. I think facts create a base level that, like, the Earth is more round than flat. That's a fact. Yeah. And there's no point banging your head against those material facts. They're a drag.
Oh yeah, I mean,
they're not
look,
the point.
Establish reality, establish facts and science like the shape of the Earth, like you and I exist, because this is another crazy thing. Many of the atheists that I believe, they ask a question, oh, how do you know you exist? You might be a brain in a jar or something.
Well, then they're missing the fact that even if you're a brain in a jar, you still know you exist.
Exactly.
It predicates on, all we're saying is phenomenological quality is occurring. Something is happening. Now, I don't know if I'm dreaming and I don't know if I'm in a vat, but something is happening which is transcendent or miraculous at some level. Yeah?
I think in order to have this kind of discussions, we need to be in touch with reality. You can't just ignore reality.
You can't.
And just speculate on things which we have no evidence for.
Sure.
Okay. So yeah, I think we have sidetracked a lot.
Well,
Let's get back.
We have meandered. But we were actually going to do original sin, but we had.
Yeah. So do you want to, I don't know, you want to maybe discuss original sin from,
Well,
your perspective?
I'm just liking jazzing it at the moment. We're covering all the important stuff, which is great. So I think, could we go back, seeing as we started on the qualia thing? The ideas being, so either qualia descends into the body a bit like a meat puppet, drives it around for a bit and then leaves, which is sort of the classical Muslim Christian view, the miraculous view, Maybe it does that.
No, not in Islam. We believe that consciousness or the soul was given to Adam, the first man, was created, and then similar with. So this is something. When you say descends and maybe
I'm trying to clarify its relationship to the body.
Oh, to the body. Yes, of course. So we have something other than our body itself, which is metaphysical, which drives the body. So that's the software for our body, which is the hardware.
Right.
If I can put it in roughly using that metaphor for us to understand.
Okay, I pin that down just by drawing a difference between subjects and objects. My body is an object. It has mass. It has energy. And it's referenceable in the material world of fact, whereas my consciousness has no mass and no energy, it would seem, and therefore exists in some twilight world, which I'll call transcendent, or at least as an emergent property, and it's profoundly mysterious. We can agree on that.
Yes.
Whether or not God, your version of God, created it, or whether it came in by another mechanism which might still be God.
So we don't know much about the root.
We don't know much about the root, but we know
soul,
it's here.
Yeah.
And we know our dilemma is how do we get through life and deal with the problems.
And like you said earlier, even the atheists don't deny this.
Yeah.
They have to accept it by faith, I would say.
Okay. Yeah.
Because they don't have empirical evidence.
This is where we also agree, where again
Yes.
I'm not, because faith always sits at the heart of these questions. Whatever empirical belief system you've got, not empirical, sorry, epistemological belief system you've got, it has to be grounded out in faith. The core axiom has to be faith. That's what we're talking about with support. And I think atheists are somehow in unconscious denial of this. They think they're just being rigorously logical, and they don't realize that you can't build that structure of logic without first making a statement of faith as to where you're going to build your first axiom.
Absolutely.
And we would agree that I think the best first axiom is to go, I am. Yeah?
Your consciousness.
Yeah, it's unavoidable.
You need to be aware of your environment.
So we can build out from there. Now, either this consciousness descended in the classical mode, or it may, in ways I can't understand, but possibly have arisen through materialism and somehow become an emergent property that transcended from it, yes. Or it might be in a panpsychic situation where it turns out that all objects actually have got a property which is consciousness and qualia as well, and we're just not aware of it, which is, there's a train of thought out there which is gathering a bit more momentum, which says, I know it sounds crazy, but at least it squares the circle.
Yeah, it is. Look, I'm not saying it's impossible, because in Islam also we believe that everything that we call as non-sentient,
Yeah.
yes, they're also in obedience to God.
Okay.
So maybe that's their nature, you know.
Yeah.
In that sense, yeah, you could say they are conscious of that at
Okay.
that level which we are not aware of.
Hang on, are we saying that even if the universe turned out to be panpsychism turned out to be the way it is, which is possible but weird, that wouldn't necessarily contradict the teachings of Islam then?
No, because for us, obedience to God,
Yeah.
yes, it has to be through some form of consciousness. So maybe, like I said, the sun and the planets, when they rotate on the axis,
Yeah.
that is the nature that they have to. So they cannot, let's say God commanded them to do that, so they cannot disobey that.
Great.
Yes, but like I said, our level of consciousness and these non-sentient, at least to us, it seems like.
Yeah.
So it seems like they are following certain laws which they are being created with,
Yeah.
and they're obedient to them. And there's nothing wrong in that. However, we as being sentient beings, we and having free will, that's the most important thing. We are the ones who will be held accountable, because no one else has been given this free will like the way we have been given. So we have a conscious mind, able to make a conscious decision to obey or disobey in that sense.
Okay.
Whereas everyone else, every other being, can
Apart
just
from jinn.
apart from jinn, can just they have to obey.
Right, so,
God's law.
what
They
their
cannot go against
trajectory
it.
is inevitable, whereas our trajectory
Yes.
is contingent based on choice.
Yes.
So we have moral
We have a choice,
responsibility,
yes.
which is slowly steering us towards where we were actually going to start, which was original sin.
Yeah. So let's discuss that. Come on.
Okay.
Maybe now's a
Within the
good.
context of what we said. But I just want to repeat what I think I just heard, that you think a panpsychic description of the universe may not be inconsistent with an Islamic.
Yes, as I defined it earlier.
Sweet.
Like this is the only difference between those non-sentient beings like the planets and the stars and the galaxies and so on, and even the birds and the animals. Yes, they are obeying certain laws of God, which we call the laws of nature, if you
Yeah.
want to, because this is the term they use, and they're just following God's command basically. They cannot disobey God's command. Okay, and there's nothing wrong in that. Like I said, we will be questioned because we have this moral responsibility of our choices.
Oh no, we're going to head there, don't worry.
Yes.
Probably going to go and move into determinism, but just to backtrack again.
Yeah.
So Islam is obviously happy with the idea of the sort of qualia descending into the body, yes? Because that's your view
Yeah,
anyway.
the souls were given to us
Yeah, in
by
soul.
God.
We call it
The only difference is, for you, this descent is from you don't know where. For us, we know the source of this soul,
Okay, fine.
or this
Fine.
qualia, if you
Okay.
call it. Yeah.
So that's option one.
That's the difference. Yeah.
And then there's option three, which is panpsychism, which actually you might not have a conflict with either.
So
But
define
option-
panpsychic.
Panpsychism would be that all matter, all objects, have got an inherent property of qualia, which we're just not aware of. So I assume that this is an object, it has matter and energy, but it doesn't feel anything, it doesn't have any emotions, it doesn't care.
Non-sentient.
It has no qualia. Qualia is all the things that you and I have that this thing doesn't. Yeah, we have hopes, dreams, care, sensation, pain, meaning, beauty, teleology, etc. Yeah, morality. In other words, all the important stuff, the stuff we care
yes,
about. Yeah,
Of course, yeah.
and you're saying that the panpsychic view, that maybe even this has got an ambient level of qualia, isn't necessarily in contradiction with Muslim teaching.
No, it's not, because I wouldn't use the term qualia over there.
Okay.
Okay, it's just that it's obeying the laws that God has, which is intrinsic to it.
Okay.
Okay, just like I said, the planets, the stars,
Yeah.
which go about its orbit, and they are consistent all the time.
Okay.
Yes, so maybe that is that's their duty, and they're doing it without any objection, without any. So that's all I'm saying, and we have no issues with that, because that is something like everything other than the humans and the jinn will be questioned, which will be accountable. Sorry, the other way around. We will be accountable, the jinn and the insan, the humans and the jinn,
Yeah.
for their choices they
Okay.
make, because we have this free will which the others don't. The other creation doesn't.
Okay. Hashim, I've got to say, I think you probably just made a lot of panpsychics very happy. That's probably big news in the panpsychic.
Yeah, this is nothing new in Islam. In fact, it's in the Quran. Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing? All right, brother? Yeah. Panpsychic. You heard that term before?
Panpsychic, yes.
So I was just telling Tony. Sorry, this is brother Tariq.
Hi, how do you? Cheers.
We know each other. Yes.
Alhamdulillah.
So what we are talking about is like Allah has given command to every lets every creation to go about their duty. For us as human beings and the jinn, these two creatures, they have something called free will, so they can choose to obey or disobey. Every other creation, they have to obey.